To care about climate change, we don't have to change who we are. We don't have to change who we, where we are on the political spectrum, where we go to church on Sunday.
We're driving this car and the oil light came on 2 years ago, and now the temperature light's on and the ocean light's on and the radiation light's on, and we're just trucking down the road.
My concern is that we are taking this information and we are forcing legislation upon people based on theoretical presumptions.
It's not a matter of one more report will do it. One more national climate assessment, that's what will solve the problem. One more new analogy and people will get it.
And it's not too soon to start talking about it. Even if it was 100 years from now that we're going to be in big trouble, that's not too soon, that's still your grandkids.
Production of Immense Possibilities is made possible by the generous support of the Earth and Humanity Foundation. People's Solutions, providing a space for finding solutions. Cliff Bar and Company, working to create a healthy, more just and sustainable food system. Deschutes Brewery, bringing people together over beer and food since 1988. The Ashland and Medford Food Co-ops and Road Credit Union. The Medical Eye Center. Elizabeth York. And these additional members of the Immense Possibilities Community Builders Circle. And this evening's program is underwritten by a special grant from the Elizabeth G. Mon Charitable Foundation.
Welcome to our weekly visit with people who are creating immense possibilities for healthy communities and solutions to all kinds of challenges. The challenge we tackle tonight hangs over every single community on Earth, bar none. It's the changing of our climate. Some of what you'll hear in the next 30 minutes you've heard before, maybe more than once. But we think we found some voices that might nudge you to some new and curious thinking, beginning with a woman whose growing national impact comes from her credibility in two supposedly conflicting worlds.
And so that's why I see faith and science as two sides of the same coin. Science is by definition bounded by what we can conceptualize, what we can document, what we can observe. And faith, I think, is the other side of that. Why does this even exist? Why can we do science? Why does the world make sense? Why are there elegant physical laws describing the behavior of our atmosphere that also apply to galaxies on the other side of the universe? We have all the information we need to take precautionary steps on this issue. It's not a scientific issue. It's not a matter of one more report will do it. One more national climate assessment, that's what will solve the problem. One more new analogy and people will get it. Information is not the answer. The answer has much more to do with who we are as humans and how we function politically. We are being told things by people who don't like the solutions to climate change and have decided that it's a lot better and it's a lot smarter to deny the reality of the problem than to acknowledge it exists but say you don't want to do anything about it. We have more than enough abundant energy to power our society, from wind, from solar, from tides, all of the things that we believe as Christians God created and has given to us as a free gift. So I think that there is the ability to have a better future, one that is built on the goodness that God has given us here in this world.
Texas Tech climate scientist and evangelical activist Katherine Hayhoe. We'll meet Katherine in a minute. But first, a note on what we're not doing tonight. We're not debating the reality of serious and imminent climate change, nor the premise that it's largely caused by human activity. We're comfortable lining up with the 97% of climate scientists around the world and the leaders of every political party, with one exception, from every prosperous country in the world, that this is all real. If you haven't reached that conclusion, one resource you might look at is Climate for Change, Global Warming Facts for Faith-Based Decisions, which Professor Katherine Hayhoe co-wrote with her husband, the Reverend Andrew Farley. Katherine joins us now from Texas Tech University. Katherine, welcome to Immense Possibilities.
Thanks for having me.
How did climate change start showing up on your radar in a big way, and how has your thinking unfolded about it?
That's a great question. I'm Canadian, so I did my high school and my undergraduate education in Canada. And in Canada, you learn about climate change in geography class. So I knew that climate was changing. I also knew that we were cutting down trees and that species were going extinct. But in my mind, I had always kind of classed all of these issues together as each one about the same importance as the other. And it wasn't until I took a class on climatology in my third year of university that I realized that climate change was a much bigger issue. And in fact, that we aren't going to be able to fix these other issues, like air pollution, deforestation, biodiversity loss, even bigger issues like poverty and hunger, lack of access to clean water and the spread of disease. We won't be able to fix these issues if we leave climate change out of the picture.
Now, you are a proud Christian evangelical, and your work has helped people understand that there's not a complete correlation between evangelical thinking and climate denial, but there does seem to be quite an overlap. Why is that?
What I love about social science is that it can actually tease this apart a little bit more for us. So when we see, is it really being evangelical or being Catholic that causes people not to agree with the science? It turns out it's not. It's the fact that people are relatively conservative, politically speaking. The more conservative we are politically, the less likely we are to think climate change is real, because we believe that the reality of climate change would threaten everything we hold dear, particularly threaten people's personal liberties, and it would encourage the government to take a bigger role in people's personal lives. That is what people believe. Our real objections were encapsulated very succinctly by a gentleman who attended a talk I gave to water managers in Texas a year ago. After I had talked about climate change and its impact on water resources in Texas, why we think it's real and what some solutions might be, this man stood up and he said very honestly, he said, you know, I didn't really agree with you when I came to this thing, but everything you've said makes sense. My problem is this: I don't want the government telling me how to set my thermostat. And so for many people, they see the solutions to climate change as involving loss of personal liberties and the government telling them what to do.
What occurs to you when you hear the premise that God's omnipotence makes it impossible that we puny humans are influencing the climate in any serious way?
First of all, we have to recognize that we have 7.5 billion people on this planet today. When you are in an airplane flying over the planet, we can see evidence of human impact on the planet whenever we look out the window. Roads, fields, irrigation, cities, highways, we can see it when we look around. We also know from the Bible that God gave us responsibility over every living thing on this planet. It says in Genesis 1 that every living thing, birds, animals, plants, bees, other humans, were put under our care. So we're not usurping God's authority. It's a question of, are we taking that responsibility? Are we responsible for this planet He's given us or not? Often, though, people who use that argument are people who also believe very firmly in predestination. So their personality is such that they demand complete control. And the idea that we could actually have the freedom to make decisions, as it says in the Bible, that we have choices to make. Everything is permissible, but not everything is beneficial. That idea often scares people. We feel like, well, then the whole world's out of control. If God isn't dictating every step I take, every move I make, the color car I buy, the type of house I live in. The reality is that we have free will. We have the ability to make decisions, good or bad, and that's what climate change is. It's simply a consequence of a decision that we as a society made a long time ago, before we knew that we had an amazing natural blanket around our planet that kept us warm, before we knew that burning coal and gas and oil would add an extra blanket to our planet that we didn't need. We didn't know that back then at the beginning of the Industrial Revolution, but we know that now, and that's why it's time to make a different choice.
You have talked to a whole lot of people about climate change in the last few years. What have you discovered tends to shift people's thinking on this issue?
The most important thing to do is to connect over values that we already share. If we're a human, which most of us are, if we live on this planet, which most of us do, if we want clean air to breathe, clean water to drink, if we want a healthy economy, if we want a better world for our kids, if we want a safe and secure environment in which to live, then those are the only values we need to care about climate change. If we're a farmer or producer, we want water to water our crops. If we live in a city, we want to make sure that city isn't going to be subject to disasters like killer heat waves or floods. If we're a Christian, we want to care for other people because we are told to love others as Christ loved us. Each one of us already has all the values we need in our hearts to care about climate change. It's not an issue of people not being smart. Often people say, oh, if you don't agree with the science, then you just don't get it. People are very smart. People do get it. But we've been told a lot of information that just isn't correct, especially information saying you can't be the person you are and care about climate change. You can't be a conservative person. You can't vote Republican. You can't be a Christian and care about climate change. And those things simply aren't true. So I've learned that it isn't more science that people need. We don't need to be, hauling out scientific reports and papers and shoving them at people. That isn't what makes a difference. What makes a difference is respecting people and saying, you are a smart person, you are a caring person, and you have all the values you need to care about climate change. Let's just talk about how it connects.
Katherine, if we have viewers who are feeling a really painful dissonance between what they're hearing on climate change and what their religious leaders or congregations are telling them, what would you have them consider?
I don't think there's any major world religion whose leaders have not stood up and made a very strong statement about climate change. So rather than looking to pundits in the media, rather than looking to politicians or ideologues, let's look at the Bible and let's look at what our real faith leaders are saying about climate change. To care about climate change, we don't have to change who we are. We don't have to change who we, where we are on the political spectrum, where we go to church on Sunday. We don't have to change the things that make us us. Who we are is the perfect person to care about climate change. We just have to connect the issue to the values that we already have.
Dr. Katherine Hayhoe teaches at Texas Tech University. She's the co-author with her husband, Reverend Andrew Farley, of the book Climate for Change, Global Warming Facts for Faith-Based Decisions. Katherine, thank you for your work, and thanks for sharing it with us today on Immense Possibilities.
Thank you so much for having me.
My concern is that we are taking this information and we are forcing legislation upon people based on theoretical presumptions.
Well, here's the thing that I would just say, though. There's been a concerted effort to make people believe that there's a huge debate in the science.
And that it's 50-50.
Exactly.
I think that the average Joe, sitting in your situation, has been given the impression that there's one Katherine with her expertise that says it's happening, and another Katherine with
the same expertise.
Same expertise.
Yeah.
It's not. Saying that it's not. So if 97% of scientists are saying it's happening, then that needs to be conveyed to the public in a clearer way and not from someone with a political agenda.
I'll stand based on 97%, then I have no problem saying, okay, this is happening to one degree or another.
We need more messengers like Katherine who say, well, I'll do that work, and then let me just share it with you. And you can trust me, and I don't have an agenda, and I don't live in a palace, and I'm not trying to get any money out of your pocket. I'm just trying to let you know what's up.
Katherine Hayhoe's work has inspired more and more people into action, including our next two guests. They are not climate scientists or religious leaders or public officials. They are two thoughtful guys who are holding their own feet to the fire when it comes to climate change. Dean Walker is the author of the upcoming book, The Impossible Conversation. Peter Melton's a radio producer and has traveled the West organizing climate presentations and discussion groups he calls Daring to Discuss. Peter, Dean, welcome. Good to have you here.
Thanks, Jeff. Thank you so much.
Dean, you are actually the one who introduced me to Katherine Hayhoe, and you called her one of your heroes. Why is that?
I was in search of somebody, anybody, who's doing a good job of reducing that polarization, finding a way to bring people who don't think like one another together so that they can have a real conversation. You might notice the name of the book you just mentioned, The Impossible Conversation.
Let's go right there. What is the impossible conversation?
Well, the impossible conversation is exactly what Katherine Hayhoe is neck deep in, and I'm so admiring of her style in that. All the research I've done in this past couple of years has pointed directly to one place, and that is there is nothing that's going to have us find a way to mitigate these climate challenges than slowing down the global operating system of human beings, meaning all that we've come to know, the gross domestic product of every single country.
What Dean is saying there, this reframing, as I see it, it's a reframing of the way we've been doing it. What I mean is overpopulation, feeding overconsumption, creating overpollution, creating changes in our climate that are shifting our habitat and destroying habitat and creating systems collapse. That's what I'm saying when I say climate change, that's the story that we see, and a growing number of people are beginning to really sink into and feel into, wow, if it's possible that it's this bad, how does that make me feel? Who do I become?
When we talk about change on the revision of our lives, on the scale I think you're talking about, there are people watching right now who think, oh, these are the back to the caves root and berry guys, and not interested. What would you say to them?
Please, I hope I'm wrong. We hope we're wrong. Show me the good news that says that this path that we're on leads anywhere, even status quo same. But everything says the systems are collapsing. We're driving this car and the oil light came on 2 years ago, and now the temperature light's on and the ocean light's on and the radiation light's on, and we're just trucking down the road. So are we being too far out there? I don't think so.
Well, what do you think of the kind of the dueling data idea about all this, where people...
I wish there was dueling data. I really do. That would make it different and maybe festive even, but please send in. Where's your anything scientific that says things are okay, guys? You know, the deniers just say you're wrong. What happens when the ocean gets more fresh water in it? What happens when the temperature at the pole is getting closer to the temperature at the equator, creates all this weirdness, weird weathering that we're having? So it's gonna snow in different places, but overall, it's getting hotter as a planet. As an ocean, it's getting a lot hotter. The poles are getting very hot. And those two things on their own are our life system.
So what's your intention in your radio show and the discussion groups you do? So you bring in speakers to communities. What at the bottom do you want to do right now? What are you hoping to do?
I'm hoping to dare us to look at ourselves a little deeper. And if we actually stop to look, we'll see that this path that we're on is completely unsustainable and completely going off the cliff. And how long it takes to go there is a topic of conversation, but that's where we're headed. And it's not too soon to start talking about it. Even if it was 100 years from now that we're gonna be in big trouble, that's not too soon, that's still your grandkids.
What's the most common obstacle to that? Why are there people turning off their TV right now as they hear all this?
Yeah, we're so in love with our luxuries. We can't handle the rattling of our status quo. And there's even a book called Don't Even Think About It that talks about physiological stuff even, that says your body won't let you think about things that's gonna rattle your whole sense of identity and your whole sense of status quo and who you've made yourself to be and who you've made humanity to be, this number one, we're the best, only greatest thing that ever happened, right? And so people, right, some can't handle it, and that's okay. Everyone will have their own response to this. And what I'm urging them to do is to dare to look at it, and if it doesn't work for you, okay. But if it does, dare to follow your heart and dare to do what that is for you.
So neither of you are saying it's hopeless. You're both saying cruising anywhere close to the way we've been doing it and expecting this problem to take care of itself is hopeless. That's futile.
That's for sure.
Yes.
For sure futile. Any fix that we would dare to do has to start with population, overconsumption, overuse of resources. You start with those three, and then we can talk. But all these solutions that people come up with are still hoping to keep the heat engine of civilization full steam ahead.
So what is needed is a pretty fast, pretty deep shift in our sense of what's important.
Yes.
Yes.
How do we do that?
Jeff, if I may, I'd like to just share one powerful change point in my 2-year process that I'm trying to share with you, is seeing the movie Cowspiracy. It showed that animal agriculture around the world is the greatest human-caused producer of greenhouse gases, of habitat destruction, and of course, precious to particularly the West Coast these days, water use, making the gallon per almond look like nothing. And what I've had to do, this is the first place where I really had to sink into the depth of what you've been asking Peter and me about. Like, how do we engage with this? It's so huge. How can I, as an individual person, make any kind of a connection with?
But this is very
process?
specific and helpful, because one of the answers is, for most Americans, a very significant dietary change. And I would say that that's not going to happen if people feel like they're doing it by themselves. History does point to examples where it happens if people feel a collective will to do it, that they are part of something bigger than themselves, and others are genuinely as committed as they are to it. Can we get there, and how?
Right. Thank you for going there, Jeff. We are very much into, this is my team, and that's your team. And this is my culture, and that's your culture. So for the whole world to come together is going to take some beyond human kind of something is going to need to move through us. And this is...
What gives you some sense that that could happen? What do you see that makes you go, yeah, maybe?
What I see, and the way that it moves through me, is that we are more than human. And what I want more than anything is to dare people to explore the possibility that there's more going on, that there's a presence, there's an urgency that's not scared. There's a presence that says, wow, all we got is now. And do you know the miracle that it is that we're even here? That we can even ponder? This is the other thing we just forgot about as humans. That the cosmic miracle that we're even here, that the climate stayed stable enough over a long enough time for us to develop into bodies and brains and all that, that we're even here.
It sounds like you feel like you've received a pretty rich gift through all this.
Oh my God, yes.
How about you, Dean? Have you been gifted?
Absolutely. The payoff is more connection with Earth, more connection with others, more connection with self, and there's this grace. Is the only word, again, I'm not a religious guy, but it just keeps showing up.
Well, this is really interesting to me, because I can imagine someone watching the show, turning it off at the end. I hope they get to the end. And then someone asks them what they've been watching, and they say, well, these two guys who are just really downers, and all they had was bad news, and the sky's falling, and yeah, and it was just really grim. You would say there's something they're missing from this conversation.
Absolutely. No matter who I'm talking to, in what culture, what country, what socioeconomic level, what religion, when we get to a depth in this conversation, and it doesn't take long, and just a wee bit of looking and pressing into that shadow and into how the choices we're making and what our values are, there's an amazing amount of grace.
Well, you know, as you talk, it makes me think that if somehow it turns out that the projections you've been looking at and believe are wrong, and the impact of climate change is much milder than a lot of people are looking at, you wouldn't be sorry at all, number one, and you wouldn't regret this process you've been going through. It's something that is enriching your lives no matter what the science turns out to be.
Absolutely.
I couldn't have said it better.
Dean Walker is the author of the forthcoming book, The Impossible Conversation, and Peter Melton is a radio host who holds events called Daring to Discuss. Gentlemen, thank you for pushing the boundaries and for stretching our box here a little bigger. Really appreciate the opportunity to talk to you.
Thanks for having us here.
Thank you both. That's it for this edition of the program. If you'd like more information or would like to send us a suggestion, go to immensepossibilities.org or visit our Facebook page and like and share us there. Thanks very much for watching. I'm Jeff Golden. Until next time, please do what you can do.
Thanks for watching. To learn about tonight's Immense Possibilities, you can watch any of our episodes anytime at immensepossibilities.org.